Hey, and we are live. Happy Monday, everybody. And I'm excited to have Steve Spulick. Spulick, did I pronounce that right?
Spulick.
I should have asked that ahead of time. Sorry about that, Steve.
No worries.
Steve Spulick, who's a VP of Supply Chain Management for, it's a mouthful, WMATA, Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority.
Yep, you got it.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Sure, my pleasure.
So I guess let's start off with the easy question. What the heck is WMATA?
So it's the authority. It's a tri-jurisdiction authority. So Maryland, DC, and Virginia. About 55 years ago, decided that the nation's capital needed a mass transit system. So they started making plans to put one together. And in fact, one of the architects was a retired general from the Engineer Corps in the Army named Jackson Graham. Our headquarters building is named after him, but he supervised the planning and construction in the 70s. So first station opened in 1976, and currently we have 91 stations. We run 117 miles of track. And we've got 269 bus routes serving over 11,000 stops. So we've got 1,300 rail cars, about 1,500 buses, and we service a population area of about 3.2 million. So we also have a paratransit. So those for folks who have some sort of a disability that would prevent them from riding the regular bus or transit. And we schedule several thousand of those trips a day throughout the region. So if they have to go to a medical appointment or go shopping, we provide that service as well at no cost, or at low cost, I think.
And I can tell for anybody tuning in how important that mass transportation system is for anyone wanting to do work in the DC into DC. Traffic can be horrendous and add a lot of stress depending on where you live. And just being able to jump on the metro and ride in and be a couple blocks from where you need to be in DC is just a time and in so many ways a lifesaver. So thank you for all of that. I don't think a lot of times we realize if you don't ride the metro, the bus, the train, everything frequently, how important it is.
Right. The pandemic's really taken a hit like it has with most mass transit. We're down, I think, over 80% on rail and about 60% on bus ridership. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
That makes sense in so many ways because you don't want to be packed onto a vehicle with a bunch of other people you don't know. So
right.
And I'm sure you guys are doing everything you can to sterilize and make it safe, but it's just still, I think the combination of work from home and everything else has brought some unique challenges.
Yeah, especially here in the DC area. I mean, we've got a lot of, white collar jobs and they're, well suited to work from home. So it's a challenge that we're looking at. How do you get riders to come back? If businesses decide that they're going to continue to work from home, we can't force them to ride.
Right. Yeah. So. I think thankfully the traffic will always cause people to want to ride the metro.
Let's hope so.
For people that live in the DC area, it's not a fun place to try to find parking and, it can be very expensive. So I think you have a population that will return to it once things really open up. I guess here's a question. Are you guys taking this opportunity to do all those repairs that were?
Yeah, we've sped up a lot of the capital repair projects. So if you're in the DC area, you've seen probably more than the usual amount of shutdowns of different rail stations. and different lines as we continue to work on that while ridership is down. So yes, we're taking advantage of that.
It's almost like doing work on the highway at night.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So that's fantastic. So Steve, I guess, I mean, let's start. What was your path to WMATA? Like, how did you end up? Was this what you thought you were going to do, or
no? Not at all.
And I know.
Not at all.
So please tell us how you ended up here.
Sure. So my previous job, I was in the Army, retired back in July of 2019, and I was doing medical logistics, stationed up at Fort Detrick, just up the road in Frederick, and decided, like everyone does at some point, it's time to move on to other things. So during that time, I'd actually met you originally when you were doing probably just starting out. I met you at Fort Meade in the basement of, I think, the SFL TAP building. There are like 8 of us. Right? You get bigger audiences now, I'm sure. But so started working on my LinkedIn profile and networking and all of those things that you had been suggesting. Participated in the Hiring Our Heroes internship program. Thought that, what was I going to do? I was retiring, 20 years in history and logistics, most recently, consulting, right? That seemed like a natural fit. I could go do consulting. So wound up getting an internship with Booz Allen Hamilton here in the DC area, and continued pursuing jobs. And then one day I got a phone call, and it was a recruiter who reached out to me, and she said, "Hey, I'm looking for someone in this role, is a supply chain management job at WMATA." And I thought, Ramada, the hotel chain? She said, no, WMATA, that's the transit agency here in DC. I said, oh, okay. She said, do you know anyone who might be interested in the job? And I paused and said, well, I might be interested in the job. So I didn't give her any other names except mine, threw my name in the hat, and we started going down the road of informational interviews. And one of the things that I did that you had suggested was looked through LinkedIn, and although he wasn't a first connection, found someone who was prior service military who worked there. And so I reached out for an informational interview and introduced myself, said, I'd applied for the job. Does he know anything about this supply chain management thing that they've got coming open? And he said, well, he was former Special Forces and had been there for about a couple of years, I think, at that point. And it turned out that he was the interim director of supply chain management while they were looking for someone else. So our 15-minute conversation turned into a 45-minute conversation while we talked about, Army life, and then we talked some about supply chain management. And it was really good because it helped set me up well as I was heading into the interviews. Also, I participated in the ACP program, had a mentor, and so I was working consistently with him to understand how to best present myself, how to interview well, right? So even the things like the STAR, being able to sort of stop and think how you're going to structure your answer before you go in. I think all of those things really set me up well for the interviews. And this time I was still at Booz Allen Hamilton. Nothing was coming up job-wise for various reasons. There was like end of their fiscal year and projects weren't happening and just a bunch of things. And I was getting worried because, retirement was coming up and, I needed a job. Decided it was a tough decision, but I decided to leave the program early and not finish because I was going to wind up finishing like the 12th week, like about 2 weeks before I was supposed to retire. And it was a tough decision, but went ahead and did that and devoted again myself full time to looking for a job, right? Because I still hadn't gotten that final job offer from WMATA in writing. So until it was there in paper, I was continuing to move forward. So that's sort of the long and short of how I got where I am today.
I got so many questions. Okay, so so one I would like to add, in the consulting world, especially, I'm assuming you weren't looking to come in as a consultant. You wanted to be at least at the manager level or higher.
Right.
They have to have the headcount available. They have to have the one work. It's tough to bring somebody on hope and a prayer and pay them a salary, not knowing that's there. They would have to build a business case that says you're going to bring them a lot of work as well. And that's just a hard sell. So nothing against BAH, I could see that being a challenge. And with the internships as well, I mean, ultimately it's an opportunity for both the intern and the company to determine fit, right? And I'm sure they got value out of you being there almost 3 months, and it's obviously helped you. Being around that environment helps a lot.
Right. That's very good.
So how did the recruiter know to call you?
Well, the only thing I know, because I wasn't looking for that job, I had no idea the job existed. I would say it was my LinkedIn profile.
Fantastic. So
I had my email and my phone number. It's still there. And I don't get a lot of crank calls from it, but I just need the one right call. That's really, I racked my brain. And, at one point I asked her and she said, well, she's looking for folks in the area, right? Because it had to be at this point, all this remote work wasn't happening, who had supply chain management background. And so like I said, I've got my number and my email as part of my, and so if people want to reach out to me, they can, and she did.
Fantastic. I love it. And you probably had all that experience listed on your profile to make it easy for them to find you.
Exactly. Great. I'd gone through, quantified everything, like you'd recommended, and just sort of put it out there, and I guess was attractive enough to earn the phone call. Yeah.
That's that phone screen they do to determine whether you really do have the experience. I love it. Now, I love that you reached out to an employee at the company, not asking for a job, asking for advice. And I know how that usually works out once you get on the phone call, if both sides are genuine about the engagement. But ACP, American Corporate Partners, what did your mentor do there? Like, what was their role? I'd love to hear about this stuff.
Right. So he sort of sat down with me, and he was consulting. He was in finance, but and a different company. He would retired from EY, and this was sort of his way of giving back. So we talked about, you like that sort of thing.
Sorry, I had to jump in there.
Sure. So we sat down, we went over my resume, we went over my LinkedIn profile, we talked about expectations for consulting, right? And that was one of the reasons I was connected with him, was because I had expressed an interest in consulting. So we went over what the corporate structure is, because all this stuff's new, right? If you're in the military, the hierarchy that we have there is oftentimes very different. Well, usually it's very different than in the civilian world. And even in the civilian world, as you know, there's, it could be very triangular, it could be very flat. Mm-hmm. What do you expect when you go into consulting? Well, I don't know. I'd been in the military for 20 something years. So just going through that, the expectations, what corporate life was like, all of those things we went through. He managed to link me up with other folks who had recently transitioned that he had previously mentored. So I talked to them about their experience in the corporate world, again, all the while trying to think, does this sound like a good fit for me?
Right.
And it did, right? I thought that it would be a good challenge to go and help other companies, solve their problems and get better as a consultant.
And so here's a question from the side on you. Aren't you doing that now?
I am.
You're just an internal consultant for WMATA.
Exactly. Brought my expertise, and they had just restructured, so it was a brand new position that hadn't existed before. And part of the reason was to have a position in supply chain management that had more of an executive level overview.
Yeah.
To sort of bring a little bit more weight to the table and push back where it made sense, and be able to have those conversations at the executive level, as opposed to just some directors who had to respond to whatever they were being told.
Right. How long did it take you to realize that you are still a consultant? You're just a consultant in the family now.
It was about 4 or 5 months, probably right about the time the pandemic hit. Like I said, I started in July or August of 2019, right after I retired. And just a few months of, who's who and all the acronyms that changed, and everyone's got their own, just like the military, everyone's got their own acronym for different things. And, what are the problems? Where do we go from here? KPMG had just come in. They were the ones who had gone through whatever. They were okay. They set things up really nicely, the way that they restructured the department.
Hey, hold on, give me 1 second. So for everybody watching, so I'm an EY alumni. EY is a member of the Big Four with 3 other firms: Deloitte, KPMG, PwC. So that's why there's a little frenemy thumbs up and thumbs down there. Just a little advice for everybody. KPMG is a fantastic firm, as are those other two that will not be named again. So go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
So they came in, looked at the way that the structure was, and said, "Hey, listen, the way that you've got things now, there's a lot of duplication of effort. You're buying way too much stuff. You need to restructure." So they suggested, pulling people in from different departments, and they created my department of supply chain management. And I have 3 different directors who are working for me now, each with a very, very focused specialization, and it works well. There's a lot of synchronization or a lot of synchronicity, I guess, that goes on between the 3 departments. And then we in turn take that out to our internal customers. But yeah, it was an internal consultant. There's a lot of challenges that have to be solved. It's, like with most things, although everyone touts, hey, here's all the latest and greatest technology and processes, the reality is a lot of companies have a lot of opportunities to improve.
Yeah.
And, WMATA is no different. So
yeah.
we're working through all of those things with, timing and money and people and politics, a union. We have a union that's a very large presence of our workforce and supply chain and throughout the authority. So there are some restrictions there that we have to learn to work within. But yeah, it's sort of an ongoing consulting.
Yeah. I mean, so that's another point. Let's not go too far into that, but that's a whole nother learning environment when you have to learn how to deal with unions. That you can and cannot do as negotiated, in contracts with them. So that's right. Something that I've had a couple of these interviews with where people have said, it's just you have to learn an entirely different way to engage. There's things you can and cannot do with telling people what they have to do or what they should do, or when they don't do something, how you respond to it. So that's, but going back to the consulting, would you say you also have to find internal clients when you want to do stuff?
I do. And they oftentimes didn't come looking for me.
Yeah. Why change? It's been working for so long. Why change it, right? All those legacy systems and people. So getting that stakeholder buy-in is crucial. Yeah.
So a lot of emotional intelligence and trying to lead by influence instead of authority, because I don't have authority. I mean, these folks, they've got their own vice presidents, and like you said, they've been doing things a certain way. How do I come in and convince them to change, to do it the way that I want, or not that I want, but I think would be best for the entire authority? So it's a lot of that, and it's culture change. That was one of the mandates, was they wanted to change the culture of how material is handled, and material takes up about 25% of our budget overall, and it's a huge budget, and so it's a good challenge. Definitely a good challenge.
I remember distinctly one of my growth moments when I took my first job out of the Army. I was like a weekend, and I walked into one of the VP's offices, and I was a director, and I said, "Hey, look, this is wrong. We really need to do X, Y, Z." And he's like, and he looked at me, he goes, "So you've been here 3 days and you're already going to fix everything?" And I was like, crap, I'm not a sergeant major anymore. Like, I can't, anybody, I could always walk into anybody's office and just advise. And they're like, well, he knows exactly what he's talking about. Like, he's been doing this for a while. Let's consider it. And I did it in this other company, and literally they just looked at me like, so
who are you?
None of us know what we're doing. You're just going to come in and fix everything. And I'm like, yeah, I'll talk to you later. So that's a great point about the EQ. And I'm glad I'm not surprised you learned it so quickly. So let's talk about what your job is, right? What does it mean to be a VP of supply chain management? Like, you talked about 25% of the revenue being what kind of supplies? Like, what kind of stuff do you guys buy?
Right. So we're different than the normal manufacturing supply chain. We don't manufacture anything. We provide a service. So a lot of what we're providing through the supply chain management department are repair parts for the buses, for the trains, elevators and escalators. We've got I think the largest fleet of elevators and escalators in North America. Under one umbrella. And an interesting fact, we actually have the longest escalator in the Western Hemisphere. It's about 1.5 miles from where I'm sitting at the on the red line at the Wheaton stop. It takes 3.5 minutes to go up, and let's see, I've got the number here. It's 230 feet long, and it rises 115 feet. So that's about 10 stories underground that this escalator takes you. But it's a 3.5 minute ride.
You're gonna have to actually email me afterwards. I actually want to like go ride on it someday.
Okay.
Not with my little kids; they don't like escalators too much. But for me, I'd be like, longest one in North America.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, it's the Western Hemisphere, not just North America. The Western Hemisphere.
Now, what about like, are you responsible for like those machines that give you the cards and to ride the metro and the paper tickets and all that stuff?
We would be responsible for the repair parts for those. So those get purchased, sort of like you buy a car, but when you take your car in for service, whatever parts you would need, that's what we would be responsible for. So it's all of maintenance and repair parts. We also do some office supplies like paper towels, toilet paper, paper, things like that. Not everything. We do have some things that are on a separate contract, like bus tires are handled a little bit differently, but those are just things that over time, made fiscal sense. So that's what they went with. But the bulk of what we do is for repair parts for the fleets.
Huge fleets. So without going too much into proprietary info, like what were some of the issues that you came in and like kind of instantly saw that needed to be addressed?
One was because all of these, it was 3 departments before that came together. One was developing a shared vision, right? And it's not we're the bus guys, we're the rail guys, we're the facilities guys. We're the WMATA supply chain team. How do we do that? And what's our vision for where we want to be as a unified corporation? So one of the first things I did within the first probably couple of months was I sat down with my directors and we did a visioning exercise. So what do we see ourselves doing? And I'm sure you're familiar with the SWOT methodology. As I was looking into what if that would be the best one, I ran across something called SOAR, which is takes a little bit more positive, forward-looking approach than SWOT, which looks at like threats and weaknesses. A lot of negative, and what the negatives, you can go down rabbit holes. People talk about that forever. So we use SOAR, and we spent literally 3 hours in the conference room with butcher blocks up on the wall and just brain dumped everything we could think of. And then a few months later, we met with our managers and supervisors and went through the same exercise. And the idea was to, again, bring everyone together. We mixed them up, right? So it wasn't all the former bus folks or the former rail folks. We also now we have a contracting section, and I also have a planning and analytics department. So a lot of times they had never worked together before. The pandemic didn't help things. So we put them together in Zoom rooms and gave them questions to discuss. And so we developed, like you were talking about, some buy-in from them as they start to craft their vision for where we're going to go, but they're part of it. So I think that's an important aspect to bring everyone together. And that's probably the biggest thing that we've done, having nothing to do with supply chain management, but having everything to enable supply chain management.
I mean, it sounds like you built a team and used mission command methodology to get everybody to understand, share vision, and start working towards the same mission going forward. So that's exciting. And I like how those are things we would do whenever we'd get into a new unit or receive a new mission, just with a tweak. Like if you'd have went in there and started talking about threats, like that wouldn't have been as well received. So there's that EQ again. And is
stayed away from the negative. Stayed away from the negative.
I love it. So what is your day like?
See, usually I'll start around 6. That's when the first reports start coming in. I'll look over them. We have 3 or 4 different daily reports that come out, see if there's anything that needs immediate action. That's my planning and analytics department. They get their start around 6. Then throughout the day, a lot of meetings, and it ranges again. So it's supply chain management, but a lot of it is other things than supply chain management. So it's dealing with human resources. It's dealing with land, because we got new facilities that are being built, and we want to make sure that we're part of that. There's a new Silver Line extension of another 23 miles heading out to Dulles, right? So there are periodic meetings about that. We have a new warehouse out there.
Hold on.
Sure.
When is that going to be done?
Yes.
Some people might want to know. Just keep going. I'm joking.
The latest is, I think we're supposed to take over from MWA August or September, so it'll be an early 2022 opening. That's the latest, and that information will probably expire when we log off. I really don't know. I mean, we'd like to move in and get our supplies out there as soon as possible and get started. But it's not our call. It goes back to the folks who are going to authorize that MWA did a good job and that the line's ready to go. There's some challenges that they've got to overcome.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, I had to ask because
no worries.
Once we start traveling, I go out of Dulles. So
Right.
for me, it would be a heck of a lot easier to just hop on with a small suitcase and take the train there.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of meetings. Again, I've been working from home during the pandemic, but even when I was at the office, it was a lot of meetings. A little bit of supply chain, maybe 15 or 20% is actively engaged with supply chain, and the rest is enabling or working with other departments, again, to try to get our point of view across and to help folks understand the importance of what we're doing and being very transparent about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's a lot. I mean, again, I joke with some of my guys about how much time we actually spend on supply chain and how much time we actually spend on other issues.
Yeah.
But it's good because, again, you're enabling folks to get better and to grow their skill sets. And we've had a lot of accomplishments to be proud of with the pandemic.
Yeah.
We've been able to provide PPE throughout this whole time in volumes that lots of zeros in terms of how many masks and gallons of hand sanitizer.
Which was not easy.
No, I mean, some of this stuff we buy by the drum.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, like, that was not easy. I had a buddy that helped Massachusetts buy it, and he shared with it what they had to do to get enough for their state was insane. And armed guards on trucks of the stuff. So early in the pandemic. So I got you. So have you guys run into any supply chain challenges, with all the factories closing down over the course of the pandemic as well?
We have. So gloves have been a challenge, right? A lot of our mechanics, they're working in grease and chemicals all day long. So nitrile gloves have been problematic, and never knew that I'd be, checking the news for what glove factories in Malaysia are doing, but that's actually really important to know because 60% of the rubber gloves come out of Malaysia because they got so many rubber plantations in that part of the world. So when one of those factories gets hit with COVID and they've got to shut down, 15 or 20 of their manufacturing facilities, it's a huge hit.
Yeah.
So that's been a challenge. Some raw materials have been a challenge. Material that goes into wheels for buses has been in short supply. And it's going to continue, right? We shut everything off last March, and there are going to be ripple effects for quite a while in the supply chain. So, when we had the ice storm in Texas, right, we have some of our material that comes through the Port of Houston, because we source things from all over the world. We've got, I think, about 50,000 unique parts that we keep in stock. So we have stuff coming in from everywhere. So monitoring that is a challenge. There have been supply chain disruptions. Knock on wood, a lot of the material that we need, we have been able to get. We've got a great procurement department, and they've been very proactive, being out in the marketplace, getting really good prices for us.
Would you say that your military experience helped you adapt in the face of this adversity, kind of to be flexible to deal with some of the, supply issues and challenges?
I would. So right after we started hearing this in the news back in January of last year, started getting together our team to say, what happens if this goes sideways? What are the plans that we would want to have in place? So I think looking for those early signs, being proactive about putting contingency plans in place, even if we might not use them, I think that was very important. And then as the situation continued to develop month over month, working with the team to be flexible and not panicking. So having that calmness that you're taught in the military to, handle problems when they come along, get a team of experts together, brainstorm the solution, and then execute. I think it served me well.
And I've started to see that in a lot of the interviews as well, where veterans or recent veterans, people that, kind of have been deployed and been through these uncertainties, when this happened, it wasn't, it was a game changer, but, we have that developed sense of, okay, this happened. Let's figure out how to get beyond it. Let's figure out what the solution is. What training do we need to do? What do we need to bring together? What resources do we need to accomplish this mission? And that's exciting to hear that. So
a lot less pointing fingers and more of how do we get to a solution? We get the lessons learned. People who are responsible for it, great. But how do we move forward in a positive way? And then we'll worry about the after action review later.
Yep, I love that. That's a great point. I had that happen in the 3 years since I've been out. I've had situations where something came up and a member of my team did it, and they're like, "Well, so and so." I'm like, "I don't care. Let's figure out what the fix is. Let's figure out where we went wrong, and then afterwards, like, we can get together and decide how we make sure it doesn't happen again." What of our processes. So I'm 100% on board. So 6 a.m. start, meetings all day. I'm guessing that means you're off by about 2 in the afternoon.
Oh yeah, every day. And then I go to the golf course, right? Because I'm staying socially distanced, and get a round or two in, and it's off to the 19th hole. No, usually it's I try to wrap things up by about 5 or 6. Sort of depends on what's going on. Working from home, it's really challenging to make sure that you've got that split between I'm at work, I'm with my family. So I try to set a hard stop time for that. There are times when things will bleed over into the evenings, but that's rare. And again, it's having discipline. We've got good teams. So a lot of our warehouses run 24/7. So, I've got a good team of managers and supervisors who are on the ground, who are handling all those problems. And rarely have I gotten calls, in the evenings or on weekends. So 6 to 5 or 6.
I share with people that in most industries, if you want to be an executive, you're not doing a 40-hour work week. So I was curious for WMATA. I mean, you're a state workforce, right? I mean, it's
quasi-governmental. It's a 3-jurisdiction compact. It's an odd entity.
So yeah, okay, because that's what I was curious. Because I was wondering if you were, held to like the federal, state, local type typical hours. But no, I mean I said the 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock jokingly because I mean you don't just automatically change that, but I know that to get to the level you're at and the type of responsibility you have won't let you just work an 8-hour workday.
Right.
And you have to find that balance yourself. So a couple questions.
Sure.
What types of roles are available at WMATA?
In general or in supply chain?
Yeah, in general, like for someone getting out of the military, if they were like, what kind of jobs could they be looking for? And what would you say would be well suited for somebody that wants to work at WMATA?
Well, we've got all sorts of jobs. We even have our own police force, right? They're sworn officers, and they're always looking for folks, right? So people with law enforcement background who like the area, they're looking for folks. And then we have all sorts of other jobs as well. We have engineering jobs, we have project management jobs, we have legal jobs, right? We have our own counsel, in-house counsel that's fairly sizable. And then what I found is we also have people in other regulatory roles because we have internal sort of regulatory, we actually have our own IG. And what I found is there are a lot of folks who have law degrees who are doing these regulatory roles, as well as other internal auditors. Looking for operators, bus operators, train operators. People enjoy those jobs. They're good, long-term, steady jobs that pay well for the region. And in general, we have some supply chain jobs periodically, but we're kind of like a little city, right? We got infrastructure. We have people who work on rails. We have people who do electricity, right? Because we all run on electrical stuff. So people who have power backgrounds, they'd fit in with doing that sort of work.
No, I asked that specifically because most people think about going and working for a WMATA or other mass transportation authority, and they only think of bus drivers, train drivers, whatever. They don't realize that all of these other jobs exist. So for someone that wants to look for a job at WMATA, aside from just going to the careers page, what would you advise?
Well, definitely, like I mentioned earlier, find someone at WMATA who's got a military background, the same service as you, or it could be, different service, and reach out to them and ask them what's a day like, and they may be able to get you in touch with someone in your particular field. One thing I didn't mention, we also have cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
We've got a huge cybersecurity presence. We're all working from home now. So, it's IT, it's Intel, right? Working with the police department. They've got an intelligence force that goes out and interfaces with, local, all the multi-letter jurisdictions, like we were talking earlier before the call, the transit system is a potential threat target. Mm-hmm. So how do you make sure that you're staying current with Intel on threats? Right. Yeah. We have that. We have our own weather department and our emergency operations center. We have a meteorologist on staff, right? Because we need to understand the weather. So quite a few jobs, but
just one meteorologist. We don't need a whole bunch of them, do you?
I think it's just one.
Everything else is, equivalent for the size of an organization. Like you said, a small city.
Everything. Right, we got 12,000. We employ 12,000.
Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, great. So I agree completely. Reach out to a veteran. I'm sure you've got a good amount of veterans in there.
We have a veterans group.
If someone's interested in the supply chain world, can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. And then I would say, as we approach the 40-minute mark, what would be your number one tip to a transitioning service member that's getting out and looking for a career?
Start now. Start now. Like when we log off, start now. Work on your LinkedIn profile. Work on networking, particularly in your own field. I'm also a fan of sort of looking outside your field a little bit as well, right? Because you never know, right? I wasn't thinking transit. I had a medical logistics background. I'd never done transit before, so I wasn't necessarily thinking about that. But don't pigeonhole yourself into what you think you're well qualified for, because there may be other people, once they see your skills and capabilities, that they might say, that's what I'm looking for. So do those informational interviews in areas that might be a little bit outside of where you think you should be. The other part is talk to other people who have a fresh set of eyes looking at you, particularly someone who's not in the service, right? So that the ACP was great because I got an honest look from someone who's looking at me as, what my qualifications are. And his whole focus is in the civilian world. He doesn't know if I would have been qualified for the next level up in some job in the Army. He's saying, well, where would you fit in the corporate world? So that independent assessment, I think, is really valuable.
Yeah, no, I think it's incredible. It's fantastic advice. It's so important. We don't know what we don't know. So it's so important to do the research, and it's not done online. You've got to actually talk to people in those jobs and learn where they think you might be a good fit. And I think that once we do enough information interview, it creates opportunity.
Yeah, and I'd say one more source is people who are close to you, right? Yeah. So like my partner, when she would see me, get excited about something, she triggers in on that and is able to see me in a way that I don't see myself. Yeah. So not just people who don't know you, who are looking at you sort of like, hey, there's this guy that just met me, but your family, right? Yeah. They're great resources as well. When say, hey, when I talk to you, what do I talk about? What gets me excited? And that may be something that would be valuable for you to look at down the road.
Yeah, I think that, that's great. I mean, that perspective, sometimes they know us better than we know ourselves in a lot of ways. And we get lost in the rank, we get lost in the MOS or specialty, and we miss the opportunity. So yeah, no, I that's a great point. And a lot of our partners or military spouses or whatever have moved and done the job search thing. And I wish more transitioning service members would really engage their better half and learn from their experience instead of trying to go at it alone. So fantastic advice, Steve. I really appreciate you spending a part of your incredibly busy day talking to us. Thank you for everything. And it's so great to catch up. I remember that session. I remember it was you, and the other person I remember was Stephen Canonico, I believe. Right. But the Soldier for Life guy that now works at AUSA. So it's a small world.
It is. It is.
Well, stay safe and please keep doing what you're doing. We need it. That silver line would be amazing. So no stress on that. And have a great day.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.